So welcome to DCD Talks. Today I'm joined with my fabulous guest from Trangistics, and we're going to be talking a little bit about fireproofing your supply chain. Essentially, what we're going to be covering is effective inventory management to prevent chaos. So it'd be great if we could begin by introducing yourselves and a little bit about your career journey so far.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Joey Huffam. I'm basically a farm boy from Eastern Oregon that turned engineer and then eventually fell into logistics. Basically, the logistics world is a problem-solving kind of scenario, and that my career has kind of been focused around problem-solving events, and so we just kind of fell into logistics. It's when you're working on construction projects, it's constant problem solving. So it's just a natural progression of where I started.
I'm Dave McGrew. My career kind of started in business development. Always been working on challenging problems, finding solutions. And I love the idea of growth and just, looking to expand and benefit companies any way we can.
Awesome. So what everyone's talking about at the minute is data center, the construction boom essentially, and how sites are able to, meet their construction deadlines, which actually often end up being missed. So what are the challenges, in how we can address that?
Well, there's a bunch of human factors that cause all kinds of problems. Just simple truck driving issues, truck drivers don't show up, or they have family issues, and just really things like that can affect the outcome of getting material delivered on time. A lot of times it's related to the actual material. Oftentimes in data centers and semiconductor fabs, the material is very large, and so you're having to lift up power lines, you're having to get police escorts. There's all kinds of complications that can kind of impact the schedule. So you have to think ahead to try and mitigate those kinds of risks. So those are some of the complications. There's even, we ran into one this past year where there were cultural issues. Building a big giant semiconductor fab and handling the logistics. There were some significant cultural issues that had to be considered and worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to the topic that we're discussing today, the actual fireproofing of the supply chain, why is, that such a good analogy as in forest fire management? How does that, what are the parallels with that and supply chain management?
Well, I think about kind of how to manage a construction project from logistics, and often think about it as related to forest management. There will be lightning strikes, there will be human-started fires, and you have to kind of mitigate and plan ahead. So you have to do clear the forest or build fire barriers, and you have to be able to put teams in place to handle any fires that happen. And that's essentially what we do in logistics. We try and mitigate, plan ahead, and put things in place to minimize impacts to schedules. So there's a correlation there.
Yeah, I think most of what, biggest part of what we do is we're constantly working on contingency plans. We're always have a backup plan. We're always looking, okay, if X happens, how do we go to Y? And it's communication, and a lot of it is just managing the communication between all the parties and making sure that everybody's aware of what's happening when it happens in real time, so they can make real-time decisions.
Okay, so what are some of the ways that data centers can address this?
I think, it amazes me that logistics is kind of brought in at the end, or if there's a problem, is when they're brought in. I think, the mindset's got to change a little bit, and logistics provider should be considered an additional GC on the project, or a trade. And so, bring a logistics provider in early in the process, and utilize them like you would, like I said, a trade, an MEP trade, or again, a GC, and start from start to finish and look at the project as a whole, and on the plan, whether it's design, because a lot of times products are designed for for use in the facility. They're not designed for transportation, and it's kind of an afterthought. And as we talk about modular design, things are getting bigger, larger, and it's more complicated to ship. And a lot of people don't understand that you can build something that may work in the facility, but it might take you a month to get it across the country, to get it to the facility.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we kind of drill down into that a little bit more, what are kind of some of the more specific strategies that we can use to delay, to improve delays and costs, the unexpected costs that we face?
Well, one of the things that we do, as Dave pointed out, is we try and put multiple plans in place, especially when you're trying to bring in large materials. So it's not just hire a trucking company and load it and get it moved. We'll have on standby. We might have cranes ready to go. We've had instances where a trailer would break in half in mid-transport, and there's a construction team on the end waiting for this piece of material. So we have to have plans in place to recover those kinds of things, and that's not insignificant. When a 150,000 pound chiller breaks in half, or the trailer breaks in half, you got to get cranes in there, and that's not always available, especially on a deadline. So things like that, we just make sure that we have backup plans to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the kind of titles that we've put on this particular strategy is, what did we call it? What was the strategy that we were talking about?
The stockpiling?
Yes, exactly. Strategic stockpiling, that's the one. Could you tell us a little bit about that and the process of that and the benefits associated with that?
Yeah, sure. You want to?
The concept kind of comes from, for many, many years, it was just-in-time delivery, right? You needed something, you went to the manufacturer, you ordered it, you said, I want it on this day at the job site. Schedules don't match up anymore. The demand is huge, suppliers can't keep up. And typically the manufacturer and the job site are working on two totally different schedules. And so when we talk about strategic stockpiling, it's not hoarding, material. It's identifying the critical components that you need the most often, and that are critical to keep the job on site. Pre-advance, buy them, bring them into a warehouse or lay down facility, and then when you need them, then it's just in time on the job site, versus hoping that they come. And then that way, if there is a delay, you can kind of mitigate that and put your crew to use doing something else. But I've always said that the cost of hold is a lot less than the cost of delay.
Yeah, and we're seeing like hyperscalers are trying to think about building multiple data centers around the country. So they're bringing in some of these materials to hold them. They know they're going to need them, and sometimes they can adjust their schedule and move material that was originally planned to go to one center, but because of the delay issues, they can move it and send it off to another location. So having that, if you want to call it strategic stockpiling, in some central location makes sense.
Could you talk us a little bit through some of the standout experiences that you've had at Trangistics specifically that have brought us to this conversation today?
Over the years, I've seen a lot of chaos on job sites. We've been on job sites, there's 7,000 workers, and there's multiple GCs, multiple trades. And a lot of times, trades are using a lot of times the same product. And so we've seen instances where there's no inventory management and inventory tracking. So somebody's looking for a switch house or something, and they can't find it. And so it becomes a giant Easter egg hunt. Everybody's scrambling trying to look for it. It got consumed. Nobody knows where it got consumed. So what happens is there's a delay. There's a lot of man hours being absorbed in that. And ultimately, a lot of times they'll reorder the product and not know where it's at. So, and it's, in some cases, we've seen millions of dollars in inventory that have just disappeared, or nobody can quantify where they went.
I think it also helps to recognize that, as Dave pointed out earlier, they usually bring us in later in the process. And what we're trying to do is educate owners and general contractors to bring us in earlier so that we can do a better job planning, as opposed to have to deal with the chaos, after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like the kind of key to success is that, proactivity and planning ahead rather than waiting for the kind of traditional just-in-time kind of methodology that we're going through.
Well, it's just in time is still applicable. It's just a different definition. It's not from the manufacturer to the job site. Now it's manufacturer to maybe some holding area and then to the job site. So we can mitigate, those issues.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are some of the, complex or unique variables to data center equipment transport you have to consider?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple. A lot of the material is just large, and so you have to plan for, a utility bucket truck to go along with the load to lift up power lines and lighting systems. So there's a lot of those kinds of complexities. Even dealing with police, because you have to oftentimes have police escorts. They don't always show up on time. They may, could be some delay, and you have to deal with those kinds of issues. So there's a lot of complexities with moving large e-houses or transformers, things like that. It can get complex.
Time of year, Ross laws come into play, and so that it affects your weight on the road. So something you were able to move in July, you may not be able to move in January. And a lot of times people don't think in those terms. Let's say a piece of equipment comes into the port of Houston and you're coming into DC, that's a different move than going over to Arizona. And so it's planning and understanding the schedule, the time, and the communication behind that. So, and a lot of that is where logistics comes in and saying, hey, I need this on such and such day, and then let your logistics partner go back and kind of work it backwards and say, okay, at that point we need to pick up on this day in order to meet that deadline.
And there are regulation issues too. There could be changes for construction that cause rerouting of freight, or bringing freight in from some other country, getting through customs. Those all complicate the problem, getting the product delivered to either the holding area or to the job site just in time.
Amazing. So to kind of round us off, what are some of the key takeaways that data center should consider for supply chain management in 2025?
Well, I think the most important is to bring in a logistics service provider as early as possible in the process, because there are things like finding warehousing if you need it, and there's some issues with market availability. Bring the service provider in early so you can lay out those plans.
Yeah, bring them in as a partner so they understand the schedule you're trying to maintain. So it kind of work together to make that happen. The thing with an LSP is they can be a great communication tool. They can kind of bridge the communication between the manufacturing and the construction teams and keep the project moving forward.
Awesome. Joey and Dave, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.